All right, you guys ready?
What? Let's go.
All right, here we go.
Good day, loyal listeners. Today, we are excited to roll out a new feature for the Beyond Sunday podcast. We have used artificial intelligence to write our podcast intro for today, taking all the pressure off of Pastor Hensley so he can solely focus on his eloquent talking points. Just listen to how flawlessly and seamlessly it mimics human language usage.
Hey there, fabulous listeners. Welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast, the podcast that takes your faith journey to the next level. We're here to basically bridge the gap between what you hear on Sunday and how to live it out every other day of the week.
Incredible.
I'm Josh Hensley. I'm going to be one of the hosts today, but I am joined alongside some amazing people. We have to my right, because Michael does this so that you kind of get a feel for the room. But to my right, we have Hannah Buttram.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hannah is our student resident here. She just completed half of a whole year of the residency, right?
Yep, halfway
Is it
through.
exciting?
I mean, hopefully they let me do 2 years, but I'm 1/4 of the way.
I want to tell you this. I was in youth on Wednesday night, and I think shortly after you started, they allowed you to speak to the students, and it was tremendous.
Thank you
It
so
was
much.
very Hannah-like, but it was very rough, if I was going to say anything.
Honestly, I needed that.
You needed,
Yeah.
but you needed the experience.
Yeah.
And here's the benefit of the residency. Last week, you spoke to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so good. Like, you did amazing.
Yeah, she
Thank
did.
Just your delivery, the way that you connected with the students. It's like you've been doing it for literally half a year.
You know, and I actually, you're not going to believe this, I actually have been doing it for half a year, Josh. And I'm really glad that my progress has shown that. But thank you for what you said.
I was
It means
very-
so
Feel the
much.
progress?
Do I feel the progress? Yes, like 100%.
Yeah, people always ask me, like, do you still get nervous?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you still get nervous, but
Yeah.
I could tell that you were not as nervous when you got up this time.
Yeah, when I get up there, I'm for sure nervous, but I just have to be like look at who I'm talking to, and I'm like, oh, you guys are chill, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking to students right now, and I know that, like, whatever thoughts I have in my head, like, you're thinking this about me, whatever, I know that those are just lies, but from the enemy, if you will.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I just don't get really, when I get up there, it just flows after that.
What has been your favorite part of the residency thus far?
I think my favorite part is probably like the relationships with students. I get to hang out with them, and I get to learn more about them, and seeing them go through things that I went through. You get to say, oh my gosh, like, I've been through that. Like, let me help you. And learning how to deal with situations I've never dealt with. Like, we've had situations before that I never thought I'd have to deal with, or I never thought that, like, I don't even know how to do this. I'm just gotta have people to guide me through that. And I get to learn how to deal with that.
Yeah, shout out to Michael and Evan on that.
Yeah,
I
for
love
real.
watching you guys do some things together. But Hannah, I got to watch you at a basketball game last night, and it was fun because Michael, Evan, Justin, who used to be a student resident, were all there at the basketball game, and you. And I watched after the basketball game concluded. There were kids that ran up to you, and mostly girls,
Yeah.
because they've made that connection because they connect with you as a female. But I thought it was awesome because there's other influencers in the room, and the first person they come running up to is you.
Are you saying that they like Hannah more?
I would say, yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
I was just curious. I thought that's what you were saying.
I think
It's by far true. for some of it, for a lot, it really is.
Well, you may recognize those voices. Hannah, we'll get back to you here in a second.
all right.
But across from Hannah is Evan Ryan, our middle school pastor.
What's up, everybody? Glad to be here.
We're so excited to have him today. And across from me, right next to Evan, is Paxton Redd, the guy who spoke on Sunday, brought us the message. We're so glad that you're here
Yeah, he
today.
did.
To a sold-out crowd on a
sold
snowy
out,
Sunday.
no seats left.
I mean, it was crazy the amount of people that showed up to hear that message.
I did get a message on the way to church from somebody that was also on their way to church that said, "This better be good."
Oh my goodness.
Made this trip to church. It better be good. But hey, there were people that followed us on our Facebook live stream on Sunday as well. That kind of increased. That was super encouraging. I haven't seen those numbers in a while, but it makes sense because everybody was shut in. But what a great resource for us to have.
And we really did. It wasn't a bad crowd that we had compared to what was going on. But it was funny. Me and Paxton were talking about this after the first service. It always seems when Paxton preached, like something like this happens. Do you guys remember what happened the last time we had to cancel on a Sunday morning?
The power went out.
Power went out, and Paxton was up there on the stage preaching that day.
Yeah,
so.
I preached one service that day.
Yeah.
Then we lost power.
The devil is hard at work trying to keep you quiet.
Right.
I think my mom is too. My mom goes up to Kevin before the first service on Sunday. She was here at church with us, and she said, Kevin, I've noticed that every time Paxton preaches, like something crazy happens. I was like, Mom, are you trying to get me off the schedule? What's the deal?
Kevin's like, you know what?
You're right.
Never thought about that.
I actually need to redo this entire preaching schedule.
But we're around the table today with our energy drinks and our phones out because we are excited to talk about what we have discussed this past Sunday. But before we jump into the talking of the message, I want to have a little discussion.
All right, let's do it.
We talked about the widow that had the oil in all of the jars that she was pouring the oil into. But Evan has a question that we kind of started talking about before we got going. Evan, what was it? Kind of relating to that. What was the question you had for us?
So I asked a few questions Sunday morning to the students, just to kind of prime them, get them ready to go for the lesson. And one of the questions I asked was, have you ever had to make something last longer than it should have? Have you ever had to make something last longer than you should have? Like think like toothpaste. You know, we all have been there before, squeezing the last drop of toothpaste out, making sure, we get that last little bit, right? What are some things that you guys have had to make last longer?
Well, Paxton, I mean, you talked about that one story of the family who had a milk cow.
Yeah.
And the mom kept on adding water just to make it go a little bit longer. I was thinking when you were talking about that, growing up, my mom didn't want to spend the money on the hand soap. So she would add water to the hand soap. Now, that's kind of wise. I mean, sometimes you get the hand soap, it's a little thick, and it takes a little bit to wash off. So why not add some water? Well, eventually it gets so diluted that the little pump that is there ends up just squirting random places, not into your hands, making a mess, and then I get mad at my mom. My mom does that when she comes to my house now. We have hand soap in every bathroom. It's like, my mom's been here. She added some water to that hand soap.
She's trying to make it last for you.
Kind of going along those same lines, did anybody's parents ever used to water down juice? Or is that just me?
My parents didn't give
What kind
me
of juice did you water
So
down?
my parents didn't do this, but I remember drinking apple juice at my parents' house and being like, man, that tastes good. That's so sweet. And then going to my grandma's house and being like, man, this apple juice tastes different. There's something wrong with this. And my grandma would put water in the apple juice because she thought it was too sweet and she wanted to make it last longer. So,
Yeah. I mean, I
really
did
like it
that
as much.
out of I don't want my kids' teeth to rot out of their face. When they were growing up and they all wanted apple juice, and it's like, we're going to water that down. But yeah, I can see that.
Mine is disposable contacts. I keep them way too long.
How long?
Way too long.
No comment.
Yeah. My eye doctor has been very frustrated with me about how long I keep the same pair of contacts.
You were just talking about this.
Yeah,
He
we
kind of
were.
got mad at you, didn't he?
Yeah. So a prescription that was supposed to probably last me 3 months lasted me 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Because one pair, if it doesn't bother me, I just keep wearing them and wearing them and wearing them. And I've probably 9 months with one pair that was supposed to be a week.
What happens to the contact? Does it gum up? Does
No.
it dry rot?
If
what's
it did, I would
happening
quit
here?
wearing it.
How does it expire? Like what?
That's a good question, Hannah, and that's why I test their limits.
I think it's all a
Honestly, you
scam, man.
That's right,
I think
yeah.
they're permanent. They just don't want you to know that.
They just want you to buy more.
I've beat the system.
You have.
All right, Hannah, we're back to you now. I know I cut you off earlier, but
Okay.
tell me a little bit about what you like to make stretch a little bit longer than you're supposed to.
I'm gonna say gas in my car.
Struggling college student, huh?
Yeah. It's
So,
really bad.
yeah, this is 100% true. There have been a few times before where Hannah has texted me or called me and said, "Evan, I'm just letting you know this in case I break down on the way there, but my gas tank is on empty. It says I have 4 miles, and I'm on my way to the gas station. It's 6 miles away, so I hope I make it."
Yeah.
And I'm not joking. This has happened multiple times, and I've told her, "Listen, like, just put gas in your car. Like, what's the deal, Hannah?"
That's what my dad says, but I'm just not doing that. Like, I'm using every single, because if the last drop gets me somewhere, I don't want that to be like wasted.
But
you know?
is it wasted? What if you just put the gas in when you're at half a tank? Is that gas that was in there
Still
before
the same,
wasted?
right?
Because then I'm gonna spend. Okay, so my gas is average $33 a tank. Okay, then if I use half my tank and I fill it up, that's like $15 around.
Yeah.
And then I have to do that more often, so then it just keeps being $15. But if I stretch it long enough to, like, I pulled up to the gas station, 0 miles left, and I've been going for 2 miles, okay? Like, I'm fine. I trust my car. But if I go to the gas station and I'm on 0 miles, that was like 2 miles of free gas. Like,
Thank you, Lord, for the free gas.
he provides.
Yeah.
He will
I don't
do
know
it.
if that's worth it just based on the amount of stress that gives you getting
All
to
right.
the gas
I
station.
like the thrill.
So here's something with the risk of enabling you to be to sit kind of in this just mindless foolery.
All right.
Did you know? That's a good word. Did you know that when your gas tank finally says, or when your gas gauge finally says you have like 0 left and it starts blinking, that they build it in the cars that there's about 25 more miles left till empty?
Oh,
Okay, I'm about to go crazy.
No, don't press it.
Yeah.
45 miles of free gas? Are you kidding me?
Still, pay attention to that.
Okay, my old car, my car like died one day. I was like, what? I have 17 miles till empty. Nah, it was empty.
Oh,
So
Don't
I got
trust it.
grounded, but
All right, I think that's enough of that talk. The reason we're talking about stretching those things in our lives is because we come off a story in, what was it, 2 Kings?
yes, sir. 2 Kings chapter 4.
Paxton, you talked about a widow that had just a little flask of oil, and what happened?
Yeah, so she was in a desperate situation, lots of debt, and creditors are coming to take her 2 sons. And so she goes to Elisha, and the Lord uses Elisha to speak to this woman, and God provides for her in incredible ways and stretches that oil so that she can sell it, not only pay for her debt, but provide enough for her and her sons to live off of as well. And we talked about how in the middle of hardships, it can hinder our perspective and stop our awareness of God's presence. We talked about how God's provision is connected to our faith. And one of the big things we really hit on was the fact that our job in this equation is to create capacity and then trust God to be able to fill it. And so when she trusts God, when she prepares, she sees that God gives beyond what she asked. But many times we can stop short of what God has for us because of our lack of preparation. And so the more she prepared, the more God provided.
Well, I mean, she found herself in this kind of desperation mode.
yeah.
You know, people coming at her. She looks at herself as if having nothing. I really have nothing to offer these people that are requiring so much of me, and I don't want to lose the things that I love the most, which is her sons. And oftentimes when we find ourselves in desperation mode, we fail to see exactly what God has designed us to be, what He has given us to have in our life, and we try to hoard those things, or we try to hold on to those things. Have you guys experienced anything like that in your life, I remember in college I had little to no money. I think that resonates probably with a lot of people in college. But anything that you guys have experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in similar situations. I mean, there have been times where I've not made a lot of money and had to just kind of rely. And when you do get desperate like that, it's really just the only thing you can see. You can't see past this need you have or whatever it is. But I think exactly kind of what the story is saying, what you said yesterday, Paxton. If you trust and do see past that and see that God's still in this, looking back, man, he provided every time.
Well, it takes so much faith.
Yeah.
I mean, how foolish did Elisha sound saying, hey, go gather as many jugs as you can. And it wasn't just her jug that she had. She went to her neighbor. She went everywhere collecting these jugs. Yeah. And that was probably foolish in her mind, but here we are. Okay.
What is this for? This isn't going to work.
Yeah, she should have went to the restaurants and got the empty pickle jars.
There you go.
And but yeah,
we were talking about this in the student group. How many jars do you think she got?
That's a really good question. It was so much so that they lose track, right? Mm-hmm. So she had enough that she lost track of how many they had. Because we know at the end she says, "Bring me another jar," and there's not anymore. So she had so many jars that she couldn't keep track of them. Right. So it was a lot, but it wasn't so many that she didn't want more. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, how in amazement would you be if you had this little flask and you just started pouring?
Yeah,
and you've been in life where like you're dumping stuff out of the tea jug and you're like, I don't know if we got enough for everybody, but I'm gonna have a full glass of tea. but what if that stuff keeps going?
Yeah.
And I mean,
it just keeps flowing.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Right. And I think that's how God intended it to be, right? And that's how he wants to operate with us, is he wants to do things in such a way that there is no doubt that it is God who provided it. If we can offer an explanation, then we'll find a way to give credit to somebody else. But if we can make sure that he's the only one that gets the credit. I'm reminded of a story of a lady by the name of Ann King. And Miss Ann was a member of the first church I pastored, an incredible lady. She was a widow and on a very fixed income. And Ann came to me one day and she told me this story. And she was doing so out of a praise for the Lord. She said, I plan my meals for a month because I'm so limited with what I have. She said, and I had enough chicken that I had bagged up and put it in the deep freeze that it was going to last me almost the whole month, but it wasn't going to make it. And she said, I remember the night before going down and getting the last package of chicken out of the freezer. And she said, so I have my meal the next day and I'm thinking, I don't have anything to eat for the next 2 days. And Miss Ann had a lot of people who cared about her deeply. She could have come to us at church and been like, hey, I need some help on this. And we would have been glad to do that. But she also was a lady who wanted to be able to take care of herself. And so she said, I just prayed, Lord, I know there's no chicken in that freezer, but I need you to provide for me in this moment. And she said, the Lord just told me, go look in the freezer again. Mm. She said, and I went to the deep freeze knowing that there was nothing in it. And there was 2 packages of chicken in there, Paxton.
Wow.
And it was the widow and the oil for her. And she was over the top excited of one of those moments where, hey, there is no other explanation. This has to be God.
That's awesome.
It reminds me of Hebrews 11:1, where it says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Yeah. In our human minds, it's very difficult to see God's vision.
Yeah.
And I think about the building. We've heard numbers, we've seen pictures, we've seen all the things. We're not at the point where we could fill that building, even if we built it today. Mm-hmm. But I have faith. Because I've witnessed God's faithfulness, I have faith that in the future, we will see this thing come to fruition. Mm-hmm. As a church, we will be blessed in our obedience, And in the end, God will continue to be glorified the more that we seek after him and follow in his will. And so if you feel any discouragement, maybe your flask of oil is, in your opinion, small. Maybe you feel like you don't have much to give, and you're wrestling with this idea of, I want to be a part of what God's doing at Newark, I just don't know how. Begin praying, and hopefully you are now. Begin praying. Maybe even use your outpouring book that we've given you to kind of work through some things. There's a lot of thought-provoking ideas in there about different things that you can do that God could bless in your endeavors. But begin praying that whatever it is, no matter how small, that God would bless it to further his kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What he wants more than anything is your obedience, even in the small things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you're talking about there is exactly what we mentioned on Sunday, is that creating capacity, right? This idea that we can do some things that we're not forcing God's hand, right? We don't get to control. It's not, I can do this and God's going to automatically do this. We're not doing that. But what we're doing is creating a space where God can move. Like, God, we're coming with a sense of expectancy here, and we're trying to create this capacity. And one of the things that I think when we talk about creating capacity in our lives is really growing our faith. And so what are some things in your lives that have been stretching or flexing the faith muscle, so to speak, to see that faith and to be able to grow and to see that capacity grow in your life? Have there been those times?
Our worship team recently went to a conference, the Worship Together conference, and one of the speakers, his name was Carlos Whitaker, and he recently did this documentary and wrote a book about it, but it was about removing distractions in your life. Now, the gist of it, kind of what he went into it with, it was almost like an experiment, like something that he was ready to prove. And his hypothesis was that phones are distracting us from life and causing more than just mental distractions. It's causing a physical toll on our body. So Carlos, he spoke to us, and of course he was pushing his book a little bit because that's what it was about, but he was very passionate about it. And what he said, I was dedicating 2 months of my life to be disconnected from my phone. Now, that's not just setting it aside and making your screen time for the week go down. Yeah. He said, I was completely disconnected. And he said, what I did was I got a brain scan that before I went on this 2-month basically sabbatical from my phone, and I got a brain scan of my head done, and I didn't get the results until afterwards. But he said the first month I was dedicated to going to a monastery and spending time with monks. He didn't have his phone. Whatever the monks did, he did. Whatever they ate, even the pace in which they walked, he did that. And so he concluded that month, and he documented it with a camera that he brought with him. And then the second month, he went and he worked with the Amish. He said, I want to get my hands into things and see what that does physically for me. The monks were maybe more mental and focused, but the Amish, they work hard. And so he said, at the end of it, he got his brain scan done, and his doctor was amazed because not only did it help his cognitive function, like you saw the parts of his brain were brighter in function, and the webs of each one of those parts of the brain were further out and brighter, but also he healed his brain. There was a part of his brain because when he grew up, he played soccer, and he said, we see this with a lot of soccer people, they head the ball all the time, and he had a dent in his brain. He said, the doctor said, you've healed your brain by 25% just by using it, giving some margin in your mental capacity. And at the end of it, he said, I picked up my phone again. He said, I make my living doing social media stuff, but he said, I'm so much more aware of the benefits of, rather than thinking about being distracted, but being focused on the right things. Yeah. And it brings me to that. the more that we focus on the things that God wants, the more that we see God working. Paxton, you said, we're only as close to God as we want to be.
Yeah.
And that really hit. Like, gosh, we all feel like, man, I want to be closer to God. Well, what sacrifice does that take?
Yeah.
If we're not willing to sacrifice the things of our life to make that happen, then it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, do you really want to be closer to God? And so that really hit me, and I think God speak to me through all of these things in the last couple of weeks. But just being, rather than thinking about being distracted, creating margin intentionally in your life that maybe it's decluttering your mind. Maybe it's giving yourself this mental space that you can focus on the things that matter and the things that draw you closer to God. Or maybe it's even changing your verbiage, the way that you speak, the way that you what you watch, what you ingest mentally as you read, or maybe it is taking a break from your phone. But whatever it is, that pursuit, I think, will give God the opportunity to speak to you clearer and maybe louder.
I like the way you describe that as a mental, physical, and spiritual process, right? Because I think a lot of times when we think of church things, we only look to the spiritual side, but God is concerned about mental, physical, and spiritual. And so absolutely our faith affects all of those things, and we can see God growing us in all of those areas.
Yeah, so Carlos Whitaker has been around for a while, but that book that he's talking about is, it originally was called Disconnected, because I told you he had full intentions of blasting the phone usage, but he renamed it Reconnected.
I like it.
So Reconnected, it's how 7 screen-free weeks with monks and Amish farmers helped me recover the lost art of being human.
Well,
And I'm getting it in. It's probably going to be one of those ones that I'm just going to sit down and read it all. But it was very engaging. It's very thought-provoking and very timely, I think, for me in these moments of the outpouring, thinking through what God's calling me to do personally.
Yeah, I like it.
I'll need a copy of that one, man. We got to take the students through that.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
that would be good. And that's the thing. The outpouring, those kind of thoughts
Right.
are for everybody, and that's what I love. This Sunday we get to see what the children and the youth have processed over the last few weeks. If you don't know, the youth have been basically collecting cards, prayer cards, commitment cards of their own, and making sacrifices that probably for a lot of them they feel like I don't really have anything to give.
It's been really, really awesome to see and go through with the students, and we had something pretty cool happen this Sunday. So we've been taking up the cards, and these cards that we're taking up. They have 2 sides. One of them is a prayer card. What are they praying for about this new student space we're going to get? And then the other side's a commitment. And, we've been talking about the commitments they're going to make because in all reality, students, they don't have a lot of money. They don't. Yeah. Most of them don't work at all, so they don't have a lot of things. But I got a really cool question this Sunday. We were going through the details of everything, when they're going to turn stuff in and all that. And one of the students, I'll say her name, Gracelyn Clark, she raised her hand, and I said, "What's up, Gracelyn? You got a question?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "I've already turned my card in. I've already made my commitment. But what happens if I pay all my commitment and I still want to give more? Can I give more?"
It's awesome.
And I said, "Absolutely, you can." Yeah, I think that's the goal, for everybody. Like, I made my commitment, and honestly, I'm even starting to think now, could I do more?
I did the same thing.
Yeah. And I haven't even paid any on my commitment yet, but I'm already thinking, hey, can I this might be possible. And I think that's the goal, and that's the proof of God working on our hearts through all this. So,
And I want to be like a child.
yeah.
Because my children, they are just like that. Like, okay, what can I do to make this happen? As I gotten older, that kind of mindset's been very fleeting.
Right.
Yeah.
The reality, the quote unquote reality of life catches up to you and changes your perspective. You've gone through hard things, but I really I really want to feel like a student and a child.
Childlike faith.
Childlike faith.
Yeah.
And my kid, Benjamin, he talked about, I know that I'm not going to be in the kids ministry, he's not in it anymore. He's in the youth ministry. But he's like, I want them to have that indoor playground.
Yeah.
Like he's looking at that, and I hope that they get that humongous like worship area that they can do live worship in. And it's like a dream that he has that more people behind him. He has no benefit from it in the sense of he's not in that ministry anymore, but he wants to see that happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mindset we all should take.
Yeah.
Like imagine what God's going to do in those spaces, and imagine what your gift can do to make that happen.
It's bigger than us.
It's so much bigger, and that's what we all desire.
Yeah.
Alone, I couldn't make it happen. There's no way. I can do very little. But together, we can make some amazing things happen where God gets the glory and his kingdom is advanced just because of our obedience. All right. We're gonna continue on in the outpouring for I think the next 4 or 5 weeks. But be ready, be praying, be invested, be humble, be faithful, and allow God to speak to you. But I want to leave us with a challenge. Take a moment during this week, maybe incorporate it into your prayer time, maybe incorporate it into your study. But are there areas in your life where you might be limiting God? We've been talking about finances. We've been talking about maybe the things that we own. But what other areas maybe are we limiting God? And when you think about that, don't feel hopeless. Don't just identify them and let them sit there, but start actively thinking about practical ways that you can create more margin and capacity for his blessing, for his provision, and for you to open your eyes and open your heart to what he may be doing inside of you rather than around you. So really take a moment this week, reflect on areas of your life where you might be limiting God. And think about that. And as always, if you listen to the podcast and maybe we hit on a subject, there is an opportunity for you to ask questions in your weekly announcements on the app. If you go in there and under the podcast area, there's a button that says Ask Podcast Questions. We would love to hear from you. Maybe it's not a question. Maybe it's a statement that we can expound upon, or maybe you just want to send us some encouragement. I know we have weekly listeners, and we'd love to hear from you. But what things do you enjoy hearing about? What things have really impacted you? Or maybe you have a question. Go ahead. We want to communicate with you and use that as a tool for us to connect even further. But we're so glad that you listen each and every week. Thank you guys for being around the table today.
Thanks for having us, Josh.
You guys are always a blessing.
Tater.
Tate, always good work. But subscribe, and follow the podcast so we can stay connected with you each and every week. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
See ya.